Pink Cloud Radio 88. And really to get on this subject because I know I've been doing these for a while. This is hard not to walk away. It's hard to walk away from all this stuff, I think. And I think it's because a lot of it, and I should say a lot, is based on something that I personally can experience or have. And I think that's why being in a pink cloud, it's up and down. Because when you're facing, being lost in the middle of nowhere, you're not really, it's kind of it's always been an uphill and downhill kind of thing because you're not really, it's not that you don't embrace anything, it's that more, I guess, desire to have something embraced back the same way. But not 100%. Not like you want something to act in the same way as you. Once is enough, obviously. I think that's why I consistently don't contact. I think it's hard to, because if I had, maybe it's that attachment that I'll get with it. I think that's the reason most people are bad, is because they do not try to be good. So I know there's obviously attachments to these words, bad and good, and there always will be. There's sort of like this discerning quality to it. So there's always going to be people trying to say like, oh, you can't appropriate people like that, or appropriate a condition of way of being by just saying like, oh, they're good or bad. But I do think that it is true to an extent to say that people don't try to be a certain thing else. Like, people fail a lot of times to try something else. And I think that's, not to bring it full cycle again back to what happened, but I think it's important to, because what had happened at the time with Christina, for example, was something of not trying, and I think if you had asked me, like personally, just outside of this whole content of information, if you were to ask me what are my biggest turnoffs, they would be not trying. That's definitely number one on the list. You don't try? Sorry. Big turnoff. You don't need to assimilate with other people's needs to make your happiness. Or, even more direct, you don't need to get someone else's approval. Disapproval, judgments. Anything that would discredit what you do to make place of your action. Your action is still bigger than that. And to me, you always have to have something for yourself. Like, that's why personally the judgment, approval, disapproval, the notary public kind of thing, big turnoff. Expectations, assumptions, putting somebody on a pedestal, those kind of things, big turnoffs. And they always will be. I'm not turned on that way. I don't get turned on and I have to, if I have to always put somebody on a pedestal. I'm not saying, and it's the same for me. I wouldn't want to be put on a pedestal for any work that I do. If I want to do it, I want to do it, obviously. Obviously if I'm disgruntled from it, if I'm put in a position where I'm put down for it, then I don't feel good for it anymore. It's just fair, I think it's fair if you honestly feel you're not getting at least enough to just say, okay, you can do this, and I don't need appreciation for it, but I just need the ability to do it without being knocked out every single time I do it. And I think that's what I meant with bringing up what happened with Christina. If I have to refer it to so gently, it's that it all was about what I was supposed to do. If I could quote that, because to me that is one of the biggest things right there. Is that you're basically trying to say one thing to reach out, and you're not getting it. And in a lot of ways that is a big turnoff. So when I hear something about what people's characteristics of how they work with things or how they are with things, like what can be revealed from it. That's why in a lot of ways I feel that being this, doing the bad is a lot more illustrious to many people, because you get something in the end for it right away. The instant gratification of it is easier. Perceptions fly everywhere, well then you're fine, And I think in a lot of ways people try to engage it in that way. That, oh, as long as I could be myself, why shouldn't I do this? To an extent, that's true, but in reality, you're kind of squashing the deal of what you originally wanted to identify with. You know, I'm talking generally. I'm not talking anything specifically. You know, if you had held a certain seriousness or at least a certain kind of quality to what you did and you could change it, then you truly never stood that way with it, you know. It was always it was always twisted and altered for what you get in life. That's it, you know. So it never was taken that serious manner because, well, that could be in any contention. You don't need one or the other to do it with. But in reality, it's not about getting that kind of closure to things. A lot of times people assume that there's always an agenda, that somebody's trying to get them back. Sometimes just to hear your words. You know, that to me is the biggest one that I always have to say, because that's why I made closure with anybody in my past. Hear those words. I want to hear what you have to say. You know, and if you don't say anything, well then, you know, at least you took what I said last seriously. You know, it means that to me, you know. And I think that's what really ended almost all the relationships, friendships, whatever. You know, if I never stood strong in what something meant, then there was no strength in the other side either. You know, and I think that's something I learned about, you know, doing this badness. You could do the bad all you want, but it's mostly because you could be weak. You don't need any strength to do the bad stuff. And I think that's something that I learned, that it comes at a price, you know. It comes at a price to learn something like that, because you're not trying to be stronger or weaker. You're just trying to do what you can. It's harder sometimes because you don't look at everybody else for answers. You know, you never do. You know, yes, you're dependent on things, but no matter how independent I am, I'm always going to be dependent, at least inside the system inside the system each world has in this place, in this community of Earth. Most places have it. Not all. There are some indefinable ones that will never be talked about that are working without that system, that are working without these systems that are so outdated and so failed. I mean, they're going to fail again because it's about human livestock. At the end of the day, you can't benefit from anything if you're just going to treat everybody like human livestock. Everybody's going to treat everybody worse because of that too. You're basically it's a teaching tool to say, oh, well, they're human livestock. Well, that means I could treat them bad. Ta-da! You know, and you wonder why people are violent. They don't need to worry. It's all human livestock. There'll be others coming, you know. And I think maybe that's the whole point. Like, to me, I look at it and I think, man, I wonder why there's so much violence. It's because everybody's replaceable. You know, I mean, what are you doing to the world? Nothing. The world has already gone dead. You can't kill people more than there already are. There's no possible way. Like, to me, when I see people being violent like that, to go out and kill just randomly or something like that, it seems so useless. Like, it really does. It's a useless gesture because humans are just livestock. That's all they are. They're like a cow, you know, with a little free range so it won't kill itself. That's it. You know? It doesn't mean it won't kill anything else. It doesn't mean it won't kill its own kind. But it just means it won't kill itself. And maybe there's a reality to that. Maybe there's a reality to this indemnification of what we are. You know, of wanting to do the good but not trying it. You know, and a lot of people do it that way. You know, I want to do so much good, but they never try. So to me, what I've learned is, and it's hard to learn, is that what the reasons most people don't, you know, are bad is because they do not try to be good. Well, because the bad is already there. You know, you don't need to worry about much because obviously someone beforehand did something underhanded, and now it's your turn. And who's gonna give up a chance? Who's going to give up an opportunity to do something like that? Instead of, you know, starting your own stuff and just trying to start over again. Why not? You know? And I'm not trying to give you a tool to, you know, manufacture your view by, but I'm just pointing out that these results are pretty easy. You know, it's not like you don't need to think about it once. Unless you honestly are unwillingly ignorant to a point where you don't have common sense, you would not understand what I'm saying. You basically would say, oh, no, he's wrong. You know, and that's one of the things that happened this week. It's not true. That's one of my favorite ones, especially right after you ask a question or right after you make a point. If someone says it's not true, it means they never thought about it once, and that it could be, in fact, very true. It's not because that answer that makes it true, but it's that they had never even thought about it, never even give it an opportunity to sink in, to say, maybe I am doing that. And I think in a lot of ways that's what makes it easy for people to be unwillingly ignorant and just, they may not personally make the effect of doing the bad themselves, but if you're basically assimilating some sort of product or some sort of means of working with the earth, working with the way the world is right now, and you're basically saying, well, I could hurt people for it, or let others hurt people for it, then you're only going to help, you're only going to help it get worse and worse, that's all. You're not going to help it get better by doing that. Only careless people fail at what they attempt to do. I kind of agree. Only careless people fail at what they attempt to do. I think that carelessness doesn't necessarily mean you'll fail. So I don't really think that's a good quality to point out, to say that there'd be failure with it. You attempt to do something, it doesn't mean you'll fail, even if you're careless. I think in a lot of ways when people fail, it's a lot more with what their intention was at the beginning of this anyway. It's also about, if you take an example of you gotta have something for yourself kind of attitude. In a lot of ways, if you never thought to have something for yourself and you always thought about everybody else around you when you were doing something, then you never could possibly have something for yourself. And that's one thing that I've learned. I learned it the hard way. But to be fair, it's already here anyways. There's no possible way we could own ourselves. This is, we can own ourselves to a certain extent as long as it's unimportant. That's it. Outside of that, nope. One thing I learned about this is that it's very easy to commit ourselves to an idea when we know it can't be spread anywhere else. And it's easy for me too. This Pink Cloud Radio is exactly the whole format of it. I hate that we have to live through a society that failed so many times and just look at it and just laugh. Not sarcastically, not with cynicism, but at the fact that most people think that everything was different because of the race, because of the people who started it, because of the empires that were in power when those other societies were using the exact same ways as we are. And it's so funny that people can assimilate with this, knowing that again and again and again and again. I mean, yes, it will eventually fail, no denial there. And to me, I think that's the funniest thing, is that when that happens, it's going to be like, well, maybe, we thought wrong about it. But the problem is, if you don't keep that in your mind, it doesn't matter, If your thoughts aren't that important, which a lot of people drown out, as I said about the feelings thing, I said recently about feelings, how a lot of people would say, oh, I don't like feelings. That means you don't like yourself. Right there, that's it. There's not much more to that, because if feelings have to do with the other person, well, you can't feel their feelings. So unless you're privy to some, quality or some kind of connection to people that aren't you, or that don't have the same feeling as you, where that connection would make sense to be there together, then pretty much you're basically, fraught with insecurities to a point where you're creating your own feelings, where you're basically saying that the things around you, the assumptions of what you see every day with Dr. Phil, Maury, Jerry Springer or something, is enough to keep you at ends with everything, that you're not going to do anything. Well, the big turnoff to me right there is that. If you think I'm everybody else, well, then I have no reason to be around you, because I'm going to just frustrate you from beginning to end. And I think that's why when a quote like "only careless people fail" comes up, I think about the fact that if that were completely true, then it would have to be to a point where what you define carelessness as. Like, to me, carelessness is not, doing something and, being careless about it. It doesn't mean you don't care about it. Maybe it just means that you're so used to something that it's hard to really find the passion for it. And maybe that's the whole point of what I'm trying to talk about, Pink Cloud Radio. It's all passion. That you have to put your passion in what you do, Even me working where I do, with fast food and everything. And the paranormal group, of course. The whole point is that these things that I identify with or use or am a part of, I don't think I use any of them, but at least in that way where it's like, oh, I use them, like in a way where it's like, I use them arbitrarily, No, I don't. I am a part of them 100%, even right now. I just think that this time is spent for the serenade of what I can do, and it may not mean anything. You're right. All of you are right out there to think so, because truly, it's probably difficult to take this in. It's not easy, if your perceptions are flying everywhere, it's not like you would give anybody a chance. So I'm no different, It doesn't mean that I do that consistently. I listen a lot, so. But the thing is, there's only so much I could take in, Just like anybody else, there's only so much. But I can let out a lot of steam, I'm rebellious, but I'm also complacent in what I do. So it means that I'm both complacent and rebellious, but I'm neither. Because once you do something that are contradictory like that, you stop giving a damn about any of it. There's no rebellion that's going to do something. There's no compliance that's going to do anything. We've seen both pictures and they both failed. It's time to move on from these things. Nobody wants to yet. And that's the one thing that I've learned. Nobody wants to move on not live beside these anymore. They want to keep on living with them again and again and again. That's where their frustration comes in. Their annoyance with what happened with their family members. Their annoyance with of why they got involved with a man at all, or something like that. It's always some kind of self-doubt that is just going to be there and go, execution, left, right. I mean, pretty much, if people put on trial for the kind of negativity they put on other people, everybody would be in jail, even me, But in a lot of ways, it matters what you're trying to do in the first place. That negativity, it can mean a lot, but also it can be because of the reflection of negativity that's coming from another. Like if you were to tell me, do I have any resentments from Amina, my grandma? I would say no. But I would also say that the resentments that she holds are on me now. They're in me. They are basically a little tinder box, little Pandora's box inside me. Problem is, she's not letting it go. And she could say again and again, like anybody can say, that, oh, well, my physical form, I take care of myself, I keep myself in shape. I give a fuck if you keep yourself in shape. Are you going to keep yourself in shape in your head, or are you going to keep on saying be positive but be negative about it? I can give a fuck less about how you feel there. And to be fair with you, a lot of people can say, hey, you got to watch out for people, going crazy and stuff because you don't know if you're going to be in the mix of that. Well, I personally think that in a lot of ways, if that was supposed to happen, in the way that we negotiate with our world, I'm talking about by ourselves, then those kind of things would have already taken place. Not to say that it's impossible, that accidents won't happen, or that, carelessness will fail on people, meaning that it will make people in a totally bad place and it could be gone altogether. It's possible. I don't weigh it down, but I do think in the way people encourage the kind of safety bullet to everything, meaning that, watch out, there are people out there shooting. It implies the frequency of it. It implies that if I stepped out of the house, there'd be guns shooting everywhere. Well, I couldn't go to work. There'd be no jobs because personally, nobody would step out. There'd be nowhere to go to. Bullets are going by, flying up and down, left and right, diagonal, every direction you could think of, and every place you could think of, going through the walls, going on the walls, going in the windows. The windows are all shattered. It kind of gives a guise of what we are. That if we are truly nonviolent people, or people that truly stand up for our practical values of who we are, the value of a human, we don't have any value then. And the proof is not only in the fact that people do this, which anybody can say that it started from them. Anybody. It'd be a lot harder to say that it started from the people in power. But they're the ones who started this country in the first place. If they weren't the ones who started this country in the first place, well, they wouldn't be the ones who signed the Constitution. They wouldn't be the ones who made it, who defend it. They're making this country what it is. You know, if you think it's the people in the streets, I wish it was. You know, to me personally, there's anarchy in the streets. But that's not bad. You know, to a certain extent, I can understand if it was just about nihilism and just destruction, violence, that kind of stuff. That's where I would say, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this even. You know, and you feel that. You feel that energy of what nihilism is, of what destruction is, just that kind of stuff. There's only so much that can lead to, you know, resolve, you know. And truly, it doesn't mean it can't lead to resolve. It did for the French Revolution, obviously. But at the same time, that could have been managed by a certain few on both sides. It doesn't necessarily mean it was just a mob of people in the, you know, in France that just wanted to fight. You know, I don't really think there's always an instigator, and I'll stand by that. But I do think in the last centuries or so, in the last, you know, centuries of this world, since the 1800s, I guess you could say 1600s almost, although it has been pretty much the same. The only difference is that there's been a lot of growing up about how you can use it. You know, that you could, as long as you manage the world, you're seen as a good person. But see, that's the problem. It makes it seem like all humans are just a function. You know, including yourself, obviously. But at the end of the day, that's all that it makes to be. You know, and that's where I say that if only careless people fail at what they attempt to do, you know, to be fair, careless people, that should be the people who don't fail at what they attempt to do. You know, the careless people are the ones that are in power. Careless. They don't have any care. You know, why would they? They don't need to worry about these people. You know, I don't need to worry about somebody if I'm sitting in Starbucks and they're sitting right there and they start crying and they start doing this or that. You know, I don't need to. You know, and, you know, people often do a good deed without hope or reward. That's why I'm against hope. It implies control or evil involved even, to a certain extent. I feel that in a lot of ways that is evil in itself, because you're basically influencing what somebody else has asked you to do, you know, without having any hold of it beforehand, and saying, I want something from this. You know, I have a reward in mind, you know. It implies a control, sort of like way of thinking that you should embrace. Like, if someone thinks that way, then you should think that way too. But a lot of ways, a lot of things like this come from a place where people want you to think the same way too. So if I were to bring this up to somebody and they would say, you know what, that's a good idea, you know it's wrong. Because it really creates the kind of atmosphere the person is. And it's in each person, you know. All of us can do this. And that's the thing about it, like, I think that's where a lot of people are okay with how the systems have been working. Because all you need to do is look at what these people are doing on their own hands and knees. 1 second. Hello? Hey, Mom. Fine. No. Oh, okay. No, I'm fine right now. Oh, okay. Love you. Oh, okay. Love you too. Yeah. Bye-bye. But the one thing I've learned is, and it's hard to learn because you don't put it down in, you know, said stone or something. I'll get back to this in a second, but like I said, people often do a good deed without hope or reward. And that's why I'm against hope. You know, there's a configuration that people create. You know, that people try to explode, implode, use something to not so much deceive, but have a certain breed of thinking. You know, that you're implying a control or an evil involved in something based on the fact that you want something in return. You know, that you right away are saying, I want this, you know. But for an evil deed, they always demand payment, you know, right there, you know, on the spot. And yeah, a real good deed doer would not have hope or reward in mind. As myself, There's a butchery of thinking once you use hope, once you use a device like hope to say, hey, I want to do better here. But you're doing better by basically, savaging the land of what can be better reward itself. Because I do think there's a lot of personal in what we do. If we don't have our own time for it, there's your problem. The one thing that I've learned is you got to give yourself time for it. That's all. You can work around every single thing. You just got to find it. And you can find it. It is not impossible. If it is impossible, it's because not only have you let it be impossible, the person around you has personally given their debt to everything to push you away from it. Everything. The one thing I learned is that there's this incredible way of people basically living their life out to seek revenge, take anything they want, the autonomy of the world in their hands. But they fail at taking care of that world. They fail at loving that world. There's nothing in return I could need. Out of everything that has happened, why the fuck would I want something back for it? I don't need them to run away from me. I don't need them to leave me the fuck alone. They passed on their life with me. They obviously did. The one thing I learned is that this cure for everything, this cure-all, is becoming like the sex and options that are there. There's enough there. If I want to be like that, I go all the way with it. I'm a person who goes all the way with something. So if I was going to lead my life into, sex and options, I would have gone the whole way. Would have been a porn star or something. What I'm getting at is, you can't do it once you start. Once you start down the road of passion, you can't just, glare away and say, well, I'll just use nice little chuckles to get my point across. There can be chuckles in what I say, and I'm sure there are. But I'm also in the time of saying no. This is needful hurts. This is something that is created by the same way that people walk away from something. They make their own pain. They make their own hurt. That's why to me, like I said here, they demand payment if it's an evil deed for that purpose, What do you expect of a civilization built on pain for work? What do you expect? Do you expect it to survive? What that work involves in all states of mind, heart, and what follows to be created of it. The fact that we're in a basically service system. Service, that's it. There's nothing you can go above to create something more from that. There's nothing. We're stuck. We're trapped in this hole of nothing. And we're saying, this is civilization. Tell me again what you mean by that. It's just people staying in ownership. That's all. And it doesn't last forever. So they're going to hurt other people to get more and more. The one thing I've learned is, especially about this kind of system, is that the one thing they have to do is steal, the things that you get for free was steal and threatened away from somebody else. That's all. That's the reality of it. And a lot of times we don't look at that. It's the same as which we don't look at war. Look at the Vietnam War. That was enough for people to come out in thousands. And not to say that people didn't come out. People didn't come out again and again for the Iraq War and everything that happened. There was a huge anti-war protest in the world before the war started. Nobody listened. None of you listened. And it's sad. Because the fact that the public opinion is so high against that kind of stuff. What does that say? Nothing? The one thing I learned is that if that won't change people to recognize how much we are not valued, nothing will. You could say all you want that it's for the money, it's for the oil. But that doesn't change the fact of what they don't care about. Look at that first. Look at that. The fact that they don't care about the public opinion to say no. How can you feel represented? Tell me. I just want to know. How can you feel represented when they're doing the exact opposite of what you wanted? I sit here as a pink cloud to this whole thing because it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to, keep in our hearts. And I think it's because what we want by the end of the day is something that we don't care for. That I can say one thing, but it could lead to a lot of different things. And it always will. The one thing I learned is it always will. And that's what I mean by how can you find something good in this? How can you find something worthwhile in this? It's a question. Is it a beating heart? Is it something that will count? Maybe. But that's where we have to end with this. I can't talk much about this stuff because I feel like it's implying that we need something more with it. And I'm taking a little leisure walk down this stuff. I don't know what I feel like anymore. I know that I still feel it. In my heart and soul, everything that I do every day is still the pink cloud. I'm still here. There's other things, though, to keep in mind. I think that's why I brought up the reason most people are bad is because they do not try to be good. It's very easy. If you don't try to be good, well, then what will you get? Nothing really. I could try over and over again to settle the score with that, but ta-da, it doesn't mean much. And I think there's a reason why it doesn't mean much. Because it has to do with what people really don't like about themselves. When you bring up that kind of stuff, oh, I'm upset about that, right away they'll attack you because it's something they don't like about themselves. It always is. And it's so close to that crucial point of making that person see it. They say, fuck you. That's it. They fraught with angst, fraught with anger, everything they could throw at you. Because they don't want to deal with it. Because what they see in you is what they hate about themselves. But yet, it's probably the thing they should love about themselves. Meaning that they gotta grow it. They gotta bring it out. But I think that's why a lot of people say, oh, they're so immature. Being immature is not necessarily about your age. It's more about that kind of stuff. Where you don't accept certain qualities of yourself and can change them. If you don't accept the quality of yourself, you're never gonna change them. And I think in a lot of ways, that's where a lot of people would say, well, I don't need to change for anybody else. Good, congratulations. Then, and it's the same reason why I would say that, only careless people fail at what they attempt to do. Well, then only careless people fail? I don't think so. It's a basic assumption right there. It's entangling ourselves in what we've seen. In what has been created. For us, for our leisure, for our reading, for our, movies or something like that. But that doesn't always happen, and in fact, it's the opposite way too that we can see things, but there's no need to embrace it one way or the other, because in reality, it's always going to show itself in its true form. If it's about being careless, that's not the biggest reason. The failure may have happened because the attempt wasn't real, And if you truly don't have an attempt that matters, then you never tried. You always submerged yourself in what somebody else is thinking, or somebody else's logic, or somebody else's characterization or something means more. So when I say that I, have failed too, and accept the failure that I have and love it, it's because it's that failure is the reason why I'm here. I'm here talking to you guys because of those failures. Am I upset? Somewhat, but I'm not upset for those same reasons that somebody else could bring up. Like if I were to say that, oh, my failure is this, but I don't know what your failure is. There's something about that really stinks. I'm just going to say it. And it does. It stinks. And I think in the best way I could say it, that what is the biggest problem with that is that we can just have certain qualities that we have. And that's it. You know, we can't make any more because other people want us to, or other people have conjectured us to really do something more with our lives. You know, so when I talk about people often do a good deed without hope or reward, that's good. I'm glad when people don't. When people do it that way, you know. That's why I'm against hope, because hope implies in itself a control, you know, from doing the action, or having evil involved in that you need something else to be made to get rid of the other stuff that's there. There's a thing about that. That's a big turnoff on either side, you know. It's the same thing that would happen to me, for example, that has with contradictory statements. If everybody else is being a contradiction, being hypocritical, they're always going to label the person that isn't hypocritical, that isn't a hypocrite, as the one who's a hypocrite. Because if everyone's a hypocrite, they're not going to put the people who are hypocrites and say, we're the hypocrites. They're always going to put the person who's not a hypocrite and say they're a hypocrite because they're not being like us and being hypocrites. So in fact, it's the opposite way around. If the majority rules, there's a problem. It means that anybody in the majority, if they all are hypocrites, for example, or a big majority of them are, then they'll always have power, even if they're being the hypocrites. That's all it means, guys. All you stuffed animals should know this. As I'm talking to myself here in my room, of course, but that's the whole point. That's the biggest problem with the majority rule. You know, I'm not saying that any other system is valid. Nope, none of them are. In fact, they were all influenced from each other, so, you know, they all are part of the same system. If you really want to look at them that way. You actually can find pretty much one came from another. That's why there's left and right. That's why they say, oh, you could be on the left, you could be on the right about stuff. I'm off that list. I'm off it. I don't care about that list anymore. It's a stupid list. I'm off it completely. You know, the tangent goes up and down. I'll be at the bottom of the curve, outside of it completely. When people say you need some government to at least have some certain things, if you have to initiate something of coercion or violence on top of people, which is government is just that. It's nothing more, nothing less. It's only protection and security come in the form of violence. Come in the form of authority figures. Well, that means violence. Authority figures don't go, I'm bashful. You know, I better not do anything to this person. Doesn't work like that, guys. But I truly can understand that, if that's your sentiment. It means that you probably don't want to look at it for the reality of what it is. And I think that's what I mean when people often do a good deed without hope or reward. That's why I'm against hope. It does imply a form of control that's there. You know, and I guess that really shouldn't speak bad of hope, but I think it does because it basically surrogates us to use what's already there to have what we do with it. To have an action against it, we use the same semblance of its own creation. There's your problem. You have to move away from that. You have to move away from the system's identity of things. You have to start saying, fuck it. You know, if somebody's going to think I'm an anarchist who wants to blow up buildings and be a nihilist, they're always going to think that way. There's no possible way they would want to understand what a volunteerist is and what a true anarchist is. The fact that this whole system is just an anarchy of the people in charge. That's it. Or the people in power. And that's all it ever will be. It can't be anything more than that. It's all human run. The human interaction that they're doing is reaction to us, and that's why we don't do anything. It's all a reaction. It's the brazen bull story all over again. The problem is, we don't even know we're being flung inside that fire. Something I've learned very harshly is that, you know. But, like I said, for an evil deed, they'll always demand payment. I want payment for this, you know. What do you expect of a civilization built on paying for work? What that work involves in all states, or mind, or heart, and what follows to be created of it. What do you think is going to happen? Now, this doesn't mean that everything you do in every part, anything to do with the money, is always going to put you in that place. Not necessarily. If we build it ourselves, that's all we need to do. It's not if we build it, they will come. No. they will not come. They are never going to come. They're going to come at the last moment when they don't want to do anything else or they failed and everybody's dead. They will come at that point. When the meek inherit the earth of nothing. That's what it's going to take, guys. And I'm sorry, I'm sorry you guys are so wasteful, but it's not your faults. The people on top are wasteful of you. I could blame them. I could blame you. I could blame the system. I could blame you. Again and again, I could point back to anyone I want. I could point back to the life, the human itself. Problem was the interaction was not there anymore. It's not there in any of us in this world. We don't interact. And I'm not even talking about technology. You don't even need technology to not see the interaction. The interaction was not there for a long time. That's why technology was able to do anything to waste us like this, to put us in this place, even deeper. It's because we never interacted when we actually did. All we did was react. That's all we ever did. We never interacted. We just reacted. What is war? Reaction. War is not an interaction. It's not like, hey, we're going to interact with these people. If you imply it in its direct narrative, it is an interaction. But the direct narrative is not the true story. It always comes from something. It comes from vengeance. It's come from avenging the deaths of these others. They're dead. It's like me going after somebody from my Uncle Ray who died, of natural causes, old age and having had a stroke a few times. A couple times, I think. There's nothing. Nothing. Nothing will make a valid claim of what happened. It will always be just what you want. That's the only thing that will come of it. This is the interaction that I've learned about what has happened in this earth. I'm not saying there's other earths. In fact, I'm at a point where I don't want to see another earth. I'm not saying I'm apathetic or misanthropic. I just don't think there's a point if the interaction stops. And it did. You didn't need computers or anything to silence the interaction of people. It stopped way before that. It stopped once you basically gave in everything for money. Gave in everything for material substance. That means nothing. That is nothing. That is just something you can make from a tree. And that's what I learned. Built on paying for work. And I think that's why it's easier to swallow knowledge than to acquire it laboriously from books. Is it not so? Some folks can swallow anything. It is. I would stop here because I feel like this is it for this week. And I'll talk about that more next week because knowledge, it's important. But it's something I'll stop at right here. I wish you the best, guys. You have a good night. Take care. All my love. As always, from this Death King. And that's all, really. That's all you need from today. This experience is nothing more. And it could be a lot more. So, take care, guys. Love to all.